Hey, how you doing today? My name is Relia, and thank you so much for stopping by. Today, I'm going to be interviewing Jason from the Hollow Knight podcast. I will leave a link down to his podcast in the description below. For some reason, when this got recorded, my mic got a little bit messed up, so please excuse that. And let's go ahead and jump right into it. First main burning question I have is about the infection and kind of how that all works. The Pale King was a worm and was able to get everyone away from the Radiance. Everyone forgets about the Radiance, except for a few people, or bugs in this case. Somehow the Radiance lives on in their dreams, and to get back at them causes this infection. Is that kind of how it's going right now in Hollow Knight? Is that the general gist of the story?
Yeah, that's a very, very good basic summary. So, from what I understand, the bugs, when they were under the rule of the Radiance, they didn't have individuality. They just lived under the Radiance's light. They were one mind, I think, that's implied
Yeah.
somewhere. So, when the Pale King showed up, after he shed his skin, he gave them all individuality in mind, and I guess the Radiance didn't like that and tried to get back at them. Yeah, you pretty much summarized it fairly well.
So I guess one of my questions is, how does the infection actually spread? Because I know that there's a orange goo all over, but I don't know that the orange goo is actually infectious. I don't know that it actually spreads through the orange goo.
I'm pretty sure it starts in the mind. If you look at Mila and how you interact with her, she starts out fine,
Mm-hmm.
but as you progress further in the game, she starts to start being less responsive, and when you dream nail her, she starts saying that the light is so bright, why does it want me to hurt this dude and or get the night? And eventually she loses herself completely to the light and becomes another one of those enemies with the pickaxes. So it starts in the mind. It starts to take them over slowly in their dreams, and because it's so bright they can't focus, and I'm assuming that the infection manifests from there physically as that orange goop.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the first to fall to the infection are those that don't really have a mind to begin with: the crawlids, the tick-ticks, the aspid hunters, things that aren't sentient normally. So it takes a bit longer for bugs with a mind to fall to the Radiance.
Oh, okay, so that makes a little bit of sense. I think that's something that I kind of missed, was the whole, if they don't have a mind, they fall faster. Part of this question is, we see bugs that don't fall to the Radiance. And by that, I mean, we see Sly and we see Bretta. Two examples of obviously sentient beings. I would imagine they were sentient before. So I guess, sorry, I'm going to ramble a little bit here.
Go ahead.
Because Sly, early on, when the Radiance was around, was he sentient back then, or was he just part of the one mind?
Ooh, that's a good question, because we're not sure how long ago it was that the Pale King took control from the Radiance. We're assuming it's a
Hmm.
long, long time. I'm because of how big like the kingdom is and how long it must have taken to build everything. Who knows? We're not sure. We're not even sure what the proper lifespan for these kinds of bugs are. Do they live only a few days like normal bugs? Do they live hundreds of years? We're not sure about the length of time.
That makes sense. I know that some people have speculated that the entire length of the game takes place in one single night.
Well, that's the length of the game, yes. People think that is the way it is because when the Hollow Knight became sealed, a enchantment was cast over the kingdom to keep it in perpetuity, which means that time cannot pass. Or the Hollow Knight just is really fast and manages to beat it in a few hours in lore, but in real time that's way too long. So it's that's another interesting topic, but as for the age of the sentient beings, like, we have no idea if Sly was even alive when the Pale King first appeared. We don't know. We know that they were around, I think. I'm not sure.
It makes sense that it would have been a long time ago that the Pale King was around, just for a couple of things. One, he was one of those worms who then cast off that shell to become the Pale King. And when we do see him, the Pale King is in the White Palace, and he's already dead in the chair.
And that's a whole nother story as to whether or not the White Palace is even a real physical place, or if that's just a place that takes place in the mind, in a dream state, right?
Right. So the big main theory there is that the Pale King took the White Palace with him into the dream world to hide it away from the Radiance
Mm.
and from the real world. There's a bunch of theories around that, but what was our original topic?
It gets really deep really quickly. So, talking partially about the age thing, because we see Sly, who is either infected or about to be infected by the Radiant very early on in the game. He's got the orange eyes, he's kind of dazed, he's out of it. Same with Bretta. And then once we talk to them, for some reason, just talking to them is enough to break them out of their daydream potentially
Yes.
and wake them up enough to now be able to fight off um, the infection and the radiance.
I'm not sure. It could be because they were only there for a short time.
Mm-hmm.
It could be because they lived most of their lives in Dirtmouth away from the infection, so it has to take a little bit longer to try and take root. And just talking to another sentient being allows them to dismiss it real quick. Well, sentient is a relative term when you talk about the night.
And it could be that they're just daydreaming, and by waking them up, you're waking them up from the dream that was like it was actually we were watching them become infected, but by breaking that whatever was going on, they don't get infected.
Right.
The Furious Vengefly, when you look at the journal entry, it says the infection that passes from creature to creature grants strength and courage, but it also seems to enslave the will. Would you make such a bargain? So it seems interesting that like the infection is something that calls to the bugs of Hollow Nest and like beckons to them like, hey, we'll give you strength, we'll give you courage, succumb to the infection. It's something that they're almost drawn to,
Right.
like moths to a light, right?
Right, and it makes sense that the beings that rely on instinct would fall to it first. Like, hey, better skills at surviving? Why not? And it makes sense that the husks would go for it too, because they've been dead for so long that it doesn't really matter to them.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't see the trade-off as a bad thing because they never had mind to begin with.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting. So, because they never had a mind, and the king gives them sentience, or they now have a mind of their own. And some of them, I guess, maybe they didn't get that much of a mind. The venge flies and the little husks.
Right. Well, we don't know how true that is because it's proven that bugs can normally be sentient outside of the Pale King's reach, as shown by the Silksong trailer. We don't know if the Pale King just freed them from the Radiance's grasp, or if he truly did give them. Well, it could be possible that he did, because if you leave Hollow Nest through the Howling Cliffs, you start to lose your sentience, apparently, which is why the ghost, like the knight, is successful as opposed to the Hollow Knight, because he has a mind born of two voids, so the void down in the abyss, and the void of the mind because he left Hollow Nest and then came back through the Howling Cliffs. So he
Got it.
So he is the first vessel to actually have no mind, which is why he's successful and the player character.
Interesting. So I thought, let's see, born of God and void.
Yes, that is how they are created. They are offspring of the Pale King and the White Lady. The White Lady provides the shells, their helmets. The Pale King provides their life by animating the void.
And so being born of God is being born of the White Lady? Is that my understanding?
Both the White Lady and the Pale King is my understanding.
Oh, they're both gods.
Yes, they're higher beings. That term is used a lot. Higher beings is also used in the tutorial area to describe beings that are sentient, but the fandom tends to use higher beings to refer to the gods of Hollow Knight, like the White Lady on Grim, things that have lots of power and knowledge.
So, and then it's obviously clear that he's got the void in him as well.
Yeah, the ghost.
The ghost, yes, the ghost has the void. So we got a rough idea of the infection, saying that it comes in for people through its dreams. It calls to them, offering basically power, and it doesn't really tell them that it's in exchange for their minds. So it sounds it's kind of like how the Radiance was originally ruling. It was ruling all these bugs without minds, but now it's doing it through an infection instead of a hive mind, and giving them extra strength in exchange to make them leave the Pale King. Like, hey, leave the Pale King, I'll give you some extra power, and then I'm taking your mind again.
Right. And the only thing wrong with that summary is that the moths worshipped the Radiance. So how could they have worshipped her if they didn't have their own mind?
I mean, they could have just been on their own level. Maybe they were able to see what was going on. Maybe the Radiance wasn't able to get to the moths for some reason, or...
They do show to have some competence and ability to enter dreams and manipulate the dreamscape, so they might have been able to worship the Radiance without losing their minds. So that could be the reason why they still have their minds and were able to worship the Radiance.
Do you think that we are going to see Quirrel later in Silksong?
I want to. I really, really want to. But I'm not sure if it's likely. I'm not sure if we're going to see any characters from Hollow Knight return. Maybe. I mean, Shakra looks like she's a disciple of the same monastery group that Elder Hu is from. So we might get references to Hollow Knight characters. Maybe we'll meet Cornifer's family. So I don't think we'll see Quirrel again, unfortunately. He was last seen deep down towards like the middle-ish of the kingdom, near the Blue Lake. Yeah, so it's not likely that we'll see him again, unfortunately. And he is really old, according to himself, because the mask was what was giving him his energy and vitality, and giving it up so that we can defeat the Dreamer caused him to actually feel his age again. So...
Oh, okay. So I missed that part. I think I kind of understood it to some level, but for some reason I missed it. Like I saw that the energy was coming from his mask, but I didn't realize that's where he was getting his energy from.
Right, because he is old enough to remember working with Monomon before she was sealed as a dreamer. So this was during the height of the kingdom.
But didn't we say that time might have been different, or that they might not have been sealed away for very long?
Who knows? Because Ogrim, the Dung Defender, he mentions that he was part of the 5 White Knights, and he said that they were powerless to fight the infection. So who knows how long the decline of the kingdom was taking place and how long it was slowly falling. So we still have no definite timeline. We just know that there was a really, really ancient civilization before all this happened. We know the Radiance appeared. We know the Pale King decided to take over and start a kingdom. We know that the Radiance returned and started the infection. The Pale King came up with a plan to seal away a vessel, and then it happens, and then the ghost reappears after escaping the abyss. And that's the timeline we have, but no definite length for that.
I just want to believe that Quirrel isn't dead, just for the pure fact that we leave the scene, and like if you leave the room and come back into the Blue Lake, Quirrel's just instantly gone and his sword's there in the ground, and I can't imagine that he just passed away, or that he's like buried in the ground, or like some bug just like came in and ate him real quick. Like something of that just doesn't sit right. I feel like he's still alive.
He could have just gone for a swim.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And then speaking of other NPCs that we might see in Silksong, I was thinking of even like Mr. Mushroom, the way that he flies away and it says to be continued. I mean, how he even thought, I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong though, I thought he talked about other kingdoms and stuff as well. I'm not entirely sure on that, but I think he did.
Yes. Mr. Mushroom is a very, very important lore character, because not only does he give you interesting dialogue, if you dream nail him each time you find him, he gives you a single verse of a poem talking about the Pale King when he was a worm.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't realize that that's what that was.
Yes, he's a very important piece of lore, and he proves that the mushrooms are all connected through a hive mind as well. We might see Mr. Mushroom again. It's entirely possible. We might see Bretta, because If you defeat the Grey Prince Zote 5 times, the total number of times to turn his statue gold, Bretta will start to realize that Zote isn't all that great. She'll be like, why are you repeating yourself? You're just repeating your 57 pre-soaps over again and again and again. And eventually she disappears from Dirtmouth, and if you go in her house and read her diary, she says that she's unsatisfied with the Grey Prince and that she wants to go and find her own true happy ending, and it's implied that she left Hollow Nest.
Yeah.
So we might see her. That would be great.
And then potentially we could even see stags, right? Because the last stag station, it makes it sound like, oh, there's more stags out there in the world somewhere.
Yes. I'm not sure if you noticed this, but after you find that egg, when you talk to the stag again, it doesn't say the last stag. It says the oldest stag.
Ah, interesting. No, I didn't. I don't think I did that.
Yeah, so it implies that he's not the last one anymore. So we might get to see the stags return. They won't be the fast travel option because whatever that giant enemy that we fight looks like it's gonna be that. But
very interesting. You actually know a lot more about the lore than I was expecting. It's really cool that you picked up on all these little details that I'm just sitting here playing the game and I'm like, how do I find the shade cloak? Where is that thing?
Well, I had a long time before I could actually play it, so I had to watch all those videos and dive deep and be like, I want to know more. I can't play it, so I might as well learn everything about it.
That's cool. That's really fun. For some reason, the Pale King decided that he wanted to defend the kingdom with saw blades.
Oh, yes, that. I'm pretty sure the saw blades weren't actually in the physical version of the White Palace. It's just that when he pulled it into the Dream Realm, he added those defenses to prevent the infection from getting too far and reaching him. That's the main theory, maybe, because who knows? Because Hornet is shown to have an affinity for saw blades as well in the Silksong trailer, so...
That's true, yeah. She does have that saw ability, which is kind of interesting. Speaking of vessels, the Hollow Knight is much bigger in the final ending, or just the boss fight as in general, as compared to the cutscene when we make our way out of the abyss and we see the Pale King walking the little knight out.
Yes.
Any idea or what the theories are behind the Hollow Knight becoming bigger?
The prevailing theory is that he aged. He grew up. That's the biggest theory. Because in the Pantheon fights, you fight the Pure Vessel. And this is before he was infected and before he took on the Radiance inside of himself. And he was still that big. But he also had a bunch of abilities that were spells and whatnot that had the White Palace aesthetic to it. So it's implied that he was raised in the White Palace testing his skills and abilities so that when he fought the Radiance, he'd be at the best fighter to fight the Radiance in his larger form. So he just simply aged and grew up, and that all vessels, if they were to age as long, would become as tall.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, I think I might have heard something like that, but yeah, that's really interesting to put it that way, as far as growing up in the White Palace and training.
Yeah, and people are saying that Hornet will also grow to be as tall because she's half vessel. I'm not sure. She's not a vessel, but she's still a half sibling to the vessels, so she may grow up to be as tall as them. We're not sure.
Because she's not necessarily filled with void. She was born of Hera instead of being filled with void, right?
Yes, but she's still half higher being because of the Pale King. It's very confusing.
It's confusing because the shell of a vessel is provided by the White Lady, but in this case with Hornet, there is no shell from the White Lady. It is the king's given something over to Hera, so they must have made like a legit baby, but it has nothing to do with a shell from the White Lady, and it has nothing to do with void.
Right.
That's pretty much all I have for now. I mean, now I've got to like sit down and digest all of this. There's so much lore to the game that it's cool. I love it. I really do.